My name is Helen E. Turner, a 36-year AIDS survivor and community advocate. Also a member of the Achieving Together Black Women's Affinity Group. I am so excited and honored to thank you, to welcome you to attending this webinar. This is our third presentation of the Did You Know series. In recognition of the Mental Health Awareness Month, this webinar is entitled Thriving, Strong, Resilient Black Women Taking Action and Ending HIV and Mental Health Stigma. The Black Women's Affinity Group is a group, a work group originating from the Texas HIV Syndicate. This work group is committed to bringing issues and concerns impacting the lives of Black women, especially Black women living with HIV and AIDS. Achieving Together is a community plan to end the HIV epidemic in Texas. Achieving Together works to bring a diverse group together around a shared vision. We are writing a new story about HIV in Texas by imagining structures and systems that allow people to not only exist, not only to survive, but also to thrive. In the fall of 2020, the Black Women's Affinity Group made the commitment to host quarterly Achieving Together webinars to bring Black women's conversations in the form of Did You Know dialogues. This webinar series is an effort from Achieving Together to engage statewide and local communities in a dialogue created by Black women for Black women on the very issues impacting Black women. Again, thank you and welcome. Now, I am proud to introduce today's moderator, Martina Stevens. As an advocate for people living with HIV and AIDS, Martina served as regional healthcare planner for Central Texas, serving 89 counties. Currently, she's a member of the Austin TGA, that's a transitional grant area planning council, emphasizing treatment and care for people living with HIV/AIDS. When considering the subgroups that HIV/AIDS disproportionately impacts, Martina focuses on Black women across the lifespan. Additionally, she teaches graduate level students in the college education at Texas A&M University. She has published articles in such academic journals as Journal of Intergenerational Relationships, Adult Learning, Journal of Underrepresented and Minority Progress, New Horizons in Adult Education and Human Resource and Development. She also creates the time to volunteer as an ombudsman. New word for me this morning, ombudsman, is really an official who does advocacy for the quality of treatment and care for residents in long-term care facilities. So now, without any further ado, I present Martina Stevens. Take it away, Martina.
Thank you, Ms. Helen. I really appreciate that introduction. I want to thank everyone for coming out. It is with great pleasure that I introduce the speaker of the hour, Shadon McCants. Shadon McCants is a licensed professional counselor. She has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and psychology and a master's degree in counseling from the illustrious Prairie View A&M University. Shout out to the HBCUs. Shadon is the owner and clinical director of Know and Live Counseling and Consulting, a private practice counseling agency in Houston, Texas, where she specializes in the healing of women, adolescents, and individuals living with HIV. Shadon is also the founder of To Know Is to Live, a 501c3 organization dedicated to promoting active, engaged, and empowered women and communities to address HIV/AIDS disparities by focusing on awareness, education, and healing. Currently, she is the co-chair for the Texas Black Women's Health Initiative Houston chapter and Let's Stop HIV Together ambassador for the CDC. While Shadon has several pursuits, she is passionate about her overall desire to empower you to know and live. Until there is an end to the HIV epidemic, she will be a catalyst to live bravely and show up fully positive and positive. Let's prepare our hearts and our minds to receive the message this dynamic speaker will bring forth. I present to some and introduce to others, Shadon McCants.
Hello, 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 everybody. I am so excited to be here today. This is definitely, hopefully going to be phenomenal for you, as I'm just as excited to be here and bring this to you guys today. So thank you, Matina. Thank you, Black Infinity. I'm excited just to be here, and that intro was definitely phenomenal. Thank you for that. So I'm not going to belabor you guys, but again, as you see, I am a licensed professional counselor here in the Houston, Texas area, and I love that work. I believe that mental health, mental emotional wellness is very, very important for each and every one of us, but especially for the Black woman. We are the individuals that I tell people, this world, this community was built on the backs of Black women. And so it's very important that we take care of our minds, body, and soul, because that encompasses our full mental and emotional wellness. So today we're going to get into really having a conversation about mental health, Black women, and specifically Black women and those living with HIV. And so my next slide, we're just going to cover over the objectives. What is it that I hope to accomplish with you guys today? And first, it is to mobilize the African-American woman to seek, understand, challenge, and advocate for her own mental health services, for herself, and also for her family. Because we know, I tell people, if mama ain't right, ain't nobody right. And that's regardless of whether you have children or not. As a woman, we are powerful. And so guess what? We have to have our own cups full, because our cup that we have is for us. The overflow, that cup, that tray that sits underneath, that's for everybody else. And so my goal is to mobilize us as African-American women to do what we need to do for ourselves. Also promote mental health literacy. I need us to understand exactly the ins and the outs of mental health, mental and emotional wellness, and also decrease negative stigma about mental health through engaging through open conversations and discussion. Unfortunately, for a long time, we have, stigmatized mental health. We made it this nasty, horrible thing. And so oftentimes it's very difficult for individuals to receive or go after the help that they need because of the stigma around seeking mental health. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start and stump that stigma today, because I am a mental health professional, love the work that I do, but I'm also a therapist with a therapist. So trust and believe that the person that's before you guys today is also a person that is walking the walk that she also talks. That's me. So next, we're going to get into some of the facts about the beginning. Where did it start? When we talk about women and mental health, and then we'll get in specifically when we talk about Black women and mental health. What we know is women have historically, faced disproportionality when it comes to seeking mental health for thousands of years. And exactly, that's thousands and thousands of years going back. There were the terms, as we talked about, crazy, hysterical. She was even mad. These are things and phrases that have been used for generations, effectively, stigmatizing and diminishing the experiences of women both mentally and physically. And so we know that these terms have been been used for so long, and they continue to stifle individuals and specifically women from getting the help that they need. We're not crazy. We're not mad. We're not hysterical, but our mental health matters. And so what we know is also that women um, are between 20 and 40% more likely than their men to develop a mental illness. So, yes, women are more likely to develop a mental health diagnosis than their male counterparts. But again, unfortunately, we are the ones that tend to, keep going, keep pushing, keep, striving to be the best. And sometimes our mental health falls by the wayside. And that's not okay, ladies. We can't continue to do that because the reality is that we are more than likely most impacted by mental health and mental and emotional wellness. Traditionally, women have been assigned the role of the caretaker, the nurturer. You know, while in reality they are capable of being all these things, the professional and holding a number of roles, the fact is it gets in the way. It gets in the way of the things that we need to do. One of the things I talk about oftentimes with women is, especially Black women, it's that strong Black woman syndrome that we gonna keep going and we're gonna keep going and we're gonna keep going. And we're also gonna put our cape on. Yes, honey, we have that cape. We fly with our cape. How many of you guys that are here in the Zoom on the live, either in Facebook land or even inside the room with us today, anybody can acknowledge the Black woman syndrome or just the cape that we like to put on, that we feel that we need to have this cape to keep going, sickness and health, we just keep moving. We don't stop. We have to be the mother, we have to be the wife, we have to be the teacher, we have to be the educator, we have to be all these things. And at some point, when do we stop and say, enough is enough? Women also, we know, face a number of social cultural challenges that contribute to the greater risk of mental health and physical health. And some of those we know is sexism. We know how, just being a woman is just tough in itself. We also know that there's the issues that women often definitely are at face at a more larger, alarming rates, intimate partner violence. And when we talk about intimate partner violence, for those that don't know, that's the former term domestic violence. Women, unfortunately, it's something that we deal with, and that it's cultural, it's social, it continues to impact the way in which we live and we function. We also know that the way the media portrays us is also an issue. But again, we can't let those things stop us from continuing to do what we need to do to continue to thrive when it comes to our mental health. Next slide. And so when we talk about Black women and mental health, we know there's a lot of different things that get in the way. As I was talking about earlier, there's so many things. The biggest thing I think is just this ability to believe that we're invincible, that I'm strong, that I am bold, that I am all these different things. And therefore, to show a sign that, guess what, I'm not okay, sometimes it's seen as weakness versus really, truly, it's vulnerability. And vulnerability is courage. It means to be strong. And so here you see there are some things that sometimes get in the way of us taking care of our mental health. And some of those things are our values. They could also be our beliefs, religion. We know that religion teaches us, for a long time to pray about it, to be strong, and not to, sometimes not to really talk about the things that are getting in our way. And so the thing is that what we want you to do today, as I said, is to be empowered, to be able to advocate for yourselves. And so some of the things that also get in the way and some barriers are our cultural norms, our expectations about how we are supposed to show up, how we are supposed to be seen. Then there is the limited resources. We know that unfortunately today in the world in which we live in 2021, there is still systematic racism. There's still systematic oppression that gets in the way of individuals, period, and specifically women, and definitely Black women, getting what they need. It's there. We understand it, and it's not right, and it's time that we do something about it. Then we know that there's the cultural competent providers. What we know is that there is less than 5% of psychologists, psychiatrists, and therapists that are Black women and that are African Americans, period, but definitely women. You know, even though you see me and I know so many other Black women, strong, competent, culturally competent therapists, but there's still not enough of us out here. And definitely when we talk about our male therapists. And so definitely when I say culturally competent, what I say by that is what I mean is that we need individuals that understand the plight of a Black woman in America. And more specifically, culturally competent when it comes to an individual who knows and understands the plight of an individual living with HIV, a Black woman. That is something, that is a whole, I don't want to say story, but it's a whole experience in itself. And so we know that that's a barrier. It's finding those individuals that are culturally competent to be there in the midst of what it is that we need in those moments of our lives. And then we also know there's the issues with medical mistrust towards the brown and Black bodies. We don't trust the medical system. For so long, it has done us wrong. And when I say us, I mean Black women, and I mean the Black and brown bodies. It doesn't, we have this issue where we get dismissed, we're not thought about, and that's not okay. And so these are all the things that go into, guys, the barriers for us getting the help that we need. But today, again, I hope that I will empower you and leave you with something to understand that your mental health, your emotional wellness is yours. And you can grab it, you can touch it, and you can take control of it, okay? So next slide. When we talk about mental health, though, guys, we know we're so used to hearing some of the main issues when we talk about mental health. When we talk about the Black community, when we talk about, what are some of the diagnoses? The main ones we hear about is depression and anxiety. And I'm not going to say that those aren't real. They're very real. As an individual that had a diagnosis of major depression disorder since I was 12 years old, I experienced a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, a lot of trauma. But guess what? The only thing that oftentimes was talked about was the depression or the anxiety. But what I know is, and I live by the motto, if you are an African American living in America, more than likely you have experienced post-traumatic stress disorder. I know we hear it, and oftentimes when we hear post-traumatic stress disorder, we think about an individual who has been to war. We think of our veterans, we think of our military, and even sometimes our police officers, those that are in, very horrific situations. We don't think about the everyday individual who experiences trauma. And like I said, Black in America, you experience trauma typically, more than likely, if not directly, vicariously. And what I mean by secondary, watching it, seeing it. And so as you see on the screen, it tells us, here's some things to know, is that post-traumatic stress disorder is common reaction to traumatic or stressful events. Can you guys think of some traumatic and stressful events that you have experienced or that you have witnessed just in the last year? Honestly, we're living one right now. It's called COVID. Coronavirus, it's definitely stressful for so many of us, if not all of us. And for some of us, it's been very traumatic. For some of us who have lost family, have lost our mothers, our fathers, our uncles, and our cousins, and we continue to see the travesty that it's having around the world, that is traumatic. That is stressful. Then we talk about today the woman who has received a diagnosis of HIV. That in itself is traumatic. Can you imagine sitting in a doctor's office, going in for a routine health exam, you getting your blood work done, and then your results come back and your doctor says, I need you to come into the doctor's office. I need you to, we need to go over your lab results. And then you hear from the doctor, unfortunately, you have been diagnosed with HIV. Just imagine the weight that holds, all the things that go into play for that individual to believe that, oh my God, my life is over. Where do I go from here? The immediate grief and shame and stigma that imparts upon that person's life in that moment. It's tough. What we know is in America, women are twice as likely than men to develop PTSD. An estimated 9.7% of women will experience PTSD in their lifetime, compared to 3.6% of men. A study in the general US population found that the highest rate of PTSD is among Black residents, 8.7%. White individuals had a lifetime prevalence of 7.4%, and Hispanics, 7%. So guess what? Again, we know that the Black community, and specifically women, we have been impacted. We are impacted by post-traumatic stress disorder. It's real. But oftentimes what I know as a therapist, it's not the diagnosis that we go to. We go to depression, anxiety, mood disorder, adjustment. But we fail to remember, or we overlook the traumatic experiences that are experienced. And oftentimes what I know is that because we're so used to just going and going and going and never stopping, we tend to don't even think of situations as being traumatic or really stressful, and the impact that it could have on our lives, and especially the woman living with HIV. According to the American Psychiatry Association, 80% of people who meet the criteria for a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder also meet the criteria for other mental health diagnoses, such as depression, such as anxiety. That is it. So just to, so you guys know, for those that, again, we often just think of PTSD, like I said, in the context of our veterans. But I need you now to think of it in the context of your life. Think of it in the context of that woman that you know or that you have experienced who may be living with HIV. She too may be experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's real. She may be re-experiencing the nightmares, having flashbacks, or intrusive memories. Because guess what? They're real. The flashback of the day of sitting in that doctor's office and hearing what that doctor had to say to her on that day. It was real, guys. She may begin to avoid repressing or ignoring the emotions, ignoring the fact that, guess what? I'm not okay today. I'm sad. I'm angry. I'm upset. These things happen. They happen in her life. And she may begin to start avoiding, and even avoiding people, places, and things. Then there's the arousal or the reactivity that happens in an individual who is diagnosed and or experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder. And this could be reckless or self-destructive behavior, whether that is overspending, whether that is, promiscuity, beginning to sleep around, beginning to just do things that are not serving of her higher purpose. These things happen, but we're just like, okay, well, she's just, or he's just, and the reality is something deeper possibly may be going on. Then there's insomnia, when you cannot sleep, or having difficulty sleeping, or having difficulty staying asleep. These things are real. They happen. And so these are some things that go into when we talk about the signs and the symptoms of PTSD. Then there is the exaggerated negative beliefs that I am bad, that nobody can be trusted. They begin to have issues with trust, not wanting to be around people. And sometimes, it can go as intense as paranoia, believing that people are out to get them and that this is just, this isn't good. And they're afraid and they're on edge and they can't go. And then there's the ability to have positive emotions, just to believe that you are innately a great person, that you were born into light and love, and that you possess those inside of you. Those become hard to believe about oneself. Again, imagining a woman experiencing a diagnosis that in that moment, she possibly may believe that it's the end of the world, that guess what? I don't have anything else to live for. And then there's the feeling constant negative emotions like shame. When I tell people, shame is what we tell ourselves we are. It's so that when you begin to tell yourself that that you're not lovable, and that you're not beautiful, and that you're not intelligent, or that, I'm never going to get married again. These are the things that I begin to ascribe to myself. So these are some of the symptoms that I want us to remember. There is depression, there is anxiety, but there also is that thing called post-traumatic stress disorder that a woman living with HIV definitely more than likely is experiencing. And so we can't ignore it. Then there's also the woman and the individual. When we talk about mental health in this month, being aware, if you've not heard about adverse childhood experiences, that is also something that we're starting to hear a lot more about. And if you haven't, the next slide I will go into what actually are ACEs. What is that? It's another experience that individuals can experience. And this is more so not something that necessarily a traumatic or a stressful event that happened in a moment, but this is something that happened in your childhood that also impacts your life. impacts the way that you show up today, impacts the way that you move and you function. And we need to be aware of it, because what we know is adverse childhood experiences also have a long lasting impact on our health outcomes. Yes, I said health outcomes. So ACEs was an investigation or research that was done years ago around individuals that were getting and having going in for gastric bypass surgery. And these two doctors discovered that these individuals were having, they had a lot of traumatic experiences or events that had happened to them in their lifetime. And what they noticed is that after through the research is that these experiences, traumatic experiences, impacted their overall health outcomes. And so oftentimes when we think of ACEs, for those that know about ACEs, oftentimes when you hear about it, it's talked about when the overall long health outcomes, when we talk about diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. But what I know is that it also impacts the woman living with HIV, because more than likely her childhood experiences have definitely impacted her long-term health outcomes. And we need to be aware of what these are and how they show up in our lives. What we know is that adverse childhood experiences, or as we know, ACEs, are traumatic events that occurred in a person's childhood between the ages of 0 to 17. And so, yes, as a woman showing up today, what we know is that the parts of her that have been impacted by trauma definitely have an impact on how she continues to live and thrive authentically today. ACEs can have lasting and negative effects, as I stated, on your health, on your job potential, on education. These experiences can increase the rate of injury, sexually transmitted infections, materials, child health problems, including teen pregnancy, complications, and even fetal death. So what we know is that we can't ignore the things that even too showed up in our young adult years. It's impacted who we are, and it continues to impact us and show up in our mental health today. And so again, I'm here to, again, bring and hopefully shed some light on some experiences some experiences that you've had, but you didn't realize that, guess what? They may be impacting the way that you show up today, the way that your mental and emotional health continues to thrive. And so what we know, ACEs are common. About 61% of adults surveyed across 25 states reported that they experienced at least one type of ACEs, that nearly 1 in 6 reported they had experienced 4 or more types of ACEs. And as you see on this slide, and I hope it's not too small, but I will definitely go into this with you guys, because I am also, again, a therapist, that my ACE score is a 7. Yes, I said it. And sometimes when I do it and it's come out to be a 7.5, and you say, well, how is the half? And that becomes because, again, as a Black woman, certain things I just felt was normal. I just felt it was a part of the everyday life. It's a trajectory of growing up for me in an impoverished neighborhood, or as we know, the ghettos. And so it's just like, this is normal. But the reality, guys, is it's not normal, and it doesn't have to be normal. And we need to combat it, and we need to talk about it more so that we can begin to do the work that we need to do to heal. And so some of the ACEs you'll see, what you do is, and I can, if you guys would like, I can actually put in the chat, or I can send to the facilitators of this event and allow you to do your own ACE and take your own ACE score, so you know what that is, so that you can understand possibly how the parts of you, those little parts, that 12-year-old, that 2-year-old, that 10-year-old, or that, for me, that 17-year-old, shows up in our current day life and impacts our current mental health and emotional wellness, and prevents us from showing up authentically who we were created to be. So some of the ACEs that you may, that when we look at the ACE score, is abuse, whether it was physical, whether it was emotional or sexual. If you have experienced any of those 3, go ahead and put a tick by your ACE score. Witnessing violence in the home or in your community. Yes, what we know is that today, violence is become a normal. It shouldn't, though. Our children witnessing school shootings, our, gun violence in our neighborhoods. And unfortunately, I'm going to say it, in our community, if you are Black in America, the witnessing of individuals being killed by the police. If you have witnessed violence, if you witnessed your mother and possibly even your father being abused in the home, put a tick by your ACE score. Then there's neglect, physically and emotionally, whether something was left behind. You, a part of you, emotionally neglected, not cared for. Put a tick by 1 or 2. Having a family member attempt or die by suicide. That's traumatic, guys, if you know about it. And what we also know is that if you have a family history of suicide, that makes the probability even higher for you and or your children. What we know is also substance abuse. Was there substance abuse in the home? Was there anyone that had an addiction to drugs and or alcohol? Mental health problems. Was there someone in the home that experienced mental health? And what I know is this. Oftentimes, this is, I think, guys, where I tell you my point 5 comes in, is because I do know now that there was mental health in my home. There was a mother who was depressed. There was a mother who was dealing with the past trauma of her life. But at the time, I didn't know that. But now I do. When I think about my siblings and the trauma that we experienced, the abuse, but we didn't know it. We didn't understand that mental health was what even mental health meant back then in the 80s. I didn't understand that. And even in the 90s, when I was in high school, I didn't realize that we had a whole unit or wing on the school for our mental and cognitive individuals who had cognitive deficits. I didn't even know it existed. Go figure. All I knew is I wanted to be a social worker, right? And so then there is the instability due to parental separation. What we know is divorce. Did your parents get divorced? Or in some cases, the what is it? They're commonly law married, but then they separate. Same thing, guys. And then there's the incarcerated parent. Were you raised in a household where a parent was incarcerated? Because what we know is that mass incarceration of our Black men is real. Again, I'm the product of that. My father was incarcerated 2 different times in the years in which I needed him most. And so again, as we know, adverse childhood experiences, guys, are something that's very real. Post-traumatic stress is very real. And like I said, I wanted to just not just talk about depression and anxiety today, because we also know that those are real too, but we tend to know that those are the main ones that we talk about, but we don't talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. And we don't talk about the adverse childhood experiences and how those impact our mental health and how we show up today, every day in the lives, living authentically who we were created to be. What I also know is when I talk about mental health, and it's so very important, and I like to make sure we know, is because when we talk about the Black woman living with HIV, all these impact her, guys. These experiences impact how she shows up today. These experiences have an impact on her life and how she lives and how she thrives, or rather sometimes doesn't. Because what we also know with post-traumatic stress disorder, we know that every year, that woman who sat in that doctor's office on that day remembers every year what that was like. Sometimes subconsciously, sometimes consciously. It's just your body reacts. It knows that this is getting ready to happen, that this was the day that I sat there and I thought that life was over. But in reality, baby girl, I'm here to tell you that it's not. It doesn't have to be over. That you can take control of your mental health and you can get what you need, hopefully, by those culturally competent to give you what you need. But I want you to know that no longer do you have to be told that, oh, you're just depressed or you'll get over it or it's just a little anxiety. No, it also may be that your adverse child experiences are impacting your overall health outcomes and that you're afraid possibly to ask for the help that you need, or that you may be experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder and that it's real and that you deserve the attention to get the help that you need in this season. So as we recognize this month this month, May, every year is what we know as National Mental Health Awareness Month. And this year, the theme is you are not alone. You are not alone. And also it's okay to not be okay. And I am the first person to tell you, as again, a mental health professional who seeks the help that she needs and has her own therapist that she loves, baby girl, woman, get the help that we need. Because guess what? That cape will eventually fly off, or if it doesn't fly off, it will choke you. Yeah, I said it. It will take the life, it will start to suck the life out of you. That cape that you continue to wear and be strong and know that you got to go and get it. Well, guess what? Sometimes it's okay to take the cape off and do what you need to do. Relax, take a break. Next slide. I'm big, guys. So as I wrap up here today, I want to just leave you guys with knowing healing is essential. Healing is necessary. And I am a big proponent, guys, that healing is what we can do and it is ours to take control of. I'm a big proponent, again, of going to get therapy. And don't wait till the house is on fire. As I just talked about today, I brought up something that some of you guys may not have ever known about, and that's ACEs, your adverse childhood experiences, and how that's impacting your mental health and also your long-term health outcomes. So guess what? Know this. I specialize in a modality called internal family systems. I'm sorry. And what that does is it definitely looks at ACEs, it looks at traumatic experiences, and it looks at the parts of who we are. Because oftentimes, unless we have done the work to heal the parts of us, for me, it's the 2-year-old girl, or the 10-year-old girl, or the 16-year-old girl, or the 17-year-old girl who sat in a doctor's office and received a diagnosis of HIV. Yes. So I know the importance of healing, guys. I know the importance of living as a woman with HIV. But today, because I've chosen to heal and not just cope, I am thriving with an HIV diagnosis. December 19th will make 26 years. So let's get into it, guys. Acknowledge it's okay to not be okay. Acknowledge that today I ain't having it. I'm angry, I'm mad, I'm upset, I'm not feeling it. And even sometimes, guess what? That I'm angry with God. That's a real feeling. That's an emotion. And don't deny yourself and don't let anybody else tell you that you can't feel the feels, because you can. It's yours. Take off your cape, as I said. Don't let it choke you. Take it off, lay it down, wash it sometimes, iron it if it needs ironing, but take it off. Do not keep it on, guys. And also ask for help. I want you to be able to ask for help, guys. It's okay. Vulnerability is not weakness. Transparency is not what our parents said. What happens in this house stays in this house. Sometimes it's okay to be transparent. Definitely with those that, as I say, creating a container with. That is creating a safe space of those that you love, whether that is with a licensed professional counselor and or psychologist, or even if you don't feel comfortable with a therapist, you may want a life coach. All I'm going to ask is that you get an individual who is certified, who knows what they're doing. Because also, as we talk about triggers and we talk about trauma, it's not okay to be processing that with someone who is not ready or is not certified, and more importantly, honestly, licensed to do that work with you. Because it's real, it's deep, and it takes you places. Because remember, ACEs are things that happen to you between the ages of 0 to 17. And oftentimes, what I know is we're big about just covering it up, sweeping it under the rug, or saying, you know what, I'm good, I'm all right. But the reality is when you begin to do the work, it gets real. Sometimes it's days that you are like, when once you're in therapy and you're beginning the healing process, those things come up. So I definitely encourage you to do that with someone who is licensed and or certified to do that work with you. And also for someone who is trauma informed. We talk about TIC. You may hear the words. Sometimes I feel like sometimes it's become a buzzword, but it's really real. Working with someone who is trauma informed. And that also goes with the professionals that you are working with, making sure that those individuals understand the impact of trauma and how that has impacted your life. Black woman, trauma, unfortunately, has impacted us a whole lot, but we are strong and we have what it takes to get what we need. And also, if that's, creating your container with mentorship, mentors, individuals who have been along this journey, who have done it, and now are willing to reach back and come and get you. And also having peer support, having those individuals that are also living and thriving and there with you. Or maybe just guess what? Because everybody hasn't gotten to the point of thriving with an HIV diagnosis. So sometimes that peer support is just what you may need. So I'm always about, let's get into it, guys. Get what you need. Don't be afraid to ask for the help that you need. And don't be afraid to go on the healing journey. Here, I just gave you guys some modalities of treatment, just so you kind of know what's out there. There's talk therapy, of course. When we talk about talk therapy, that involves the cognitive behavioral therapy of getting to the cognitions, how those negative thoughts begin and beginning to see how they impact your behavior. And then ultimately, your thinking. And so that's talk therapy. And then there's group therapy, kind of what we think about in peer group. It could also, you get group therapy where there's a facilitator who is there to help you and that group navigate through whatever it is that you guys are addressing on that day. Then there is EMDR. This is another new form of treatment, but it's also very, very phenomenal because it deals with the eye sensitization. And I say that word wrong, but it deals with the eye movement. And so it's another form of therapy if you haven't, but it's also specifically for individuals who have experienced trauma, as well as brain spotting is a new one. Helps you again to just, deal with and understand, because something I didn't say, but it's very real, what we know about post-traumatic stress disorder is that it impacts the neuroscience of our brains. It actually changes the chemistry and makeup of our brains and how our brains function. So again, when I talk about PTSD being real, it's very real. It just doesn't impact the shell of the person or the outer shell of who we are. It impacts our neurons, our serotonin, the dopamine of our brains, the neuroscience. And so it's really necessary that when we are talking about healing, that we do the work that is necessary and that you find the professionals that can do that to help you to change and shift the way that your brain has ascribed to that traumatic and or stressful event that happened to you. Then there's neuro-linguistic programming. There's also the newest one that if you guys want to get into it with me, we can definitely talk about it because we've known this for a long time, or at least we didn't know it. Those, I would just say, some of our other counterparts, they knew about the work of psychedelic assisted therapy and how that can impact truly the change of those that have experienced traumatic events. Yeah, I said it's psychedelics. You're like, huh? What? Yeah, you remember the hippie days and the LSD and the MDMA and all of that. And we've been told that those things are not good for us and they are horrible and they're this or they're that. Well, guys, I'm here to tell you, and I'm getting into it big time in the study around psychedelic assisted therapy and how that is actually doing and healing and helping with the healing journey of so many. It is definitely something that is on the rise and the cusp. And a lot of therapists are starting to do their research around how can certain psychedelic properties or agents help with the healing process to help you to really get to the core and reprogram the thinking around that experience of trauma that you may have experienced. So that's something new, that's something on the rise. Again, that's something that if you want to have a side conversation, we definitely can. There's articles I can send you, but definitely it's something and it's new and it's upcoming, and individuals are getting the healing that we have so long needed. Then there is this. Remember, guys, that healing is a journey. It's not a marathon, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Don't think that it is something that is going to happen today, that it's just going to magically overnight change, but just know that it is a journey that I hope that you will go on so that you can show up authentically who you were created to be. You are love, you are light, you are a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful individual. And definitely for the woman that is here or that hopefully sees this on the replay, that if you are a woman living with HIV, I'm here to tell you, baby girl, woman, child, you are beautiful. You are love. You are not your HIV diagnosis. As I tell people, I'm a beautiful, bold Black woman living with HIV. And this is my story. Mental health this month, guys, is important. It's important every month. So I love you and I thank you for being here. And hopefully if there's any questions, I can answer those for you. Again, I am Shadon McCants, a licensed professional counselor here in the Houston, Texas area, also ambassador for the CDC. Let's stop HIV together because we can.
Thank you so much. Oh. Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me?
Yes, we hear you, Martina.
Okay, thank you so much, Shadon, for that message of enlightenment, hope, and transformational learning. We received this message in the spirit that it was given. In this message, Shadon has identified several concepts: trauma, barriers to treatment and care, PTSD, ACEs, and healing justice, just to name a few. Let's conceptualize these ideologies as we transition into the icebreaker. Thank you. And again, thank you so much, Shadon. I would now turn it over to Liza.
Hi, everyone. This is Lisa. Thank you,
Lisa,
Shadon, for that phenomenal presentation that was just touching on so many points. We would like to hear from you all about what stood out to you all from Shadon's presentation. You should see on your screen there is a QR code that you can use for your phone. You hover your phone over, you can click on that link and that will take you to a survey. We will also be pasting a link in the chat that you can click on that will take you directly to that survey. If it asks you for a code, you can enter the code that is on your slide. Once you're done with entering your response to the survey question, you can return back to the Zoom to see the responses. Again, you can use the QR code on your slide, or you can go to the link to the survey that is in the chat, and that will take you directly to the survey.
And momentarily, we'll be putting up on the screen so we can see everybody's answers. But we just want to keep this up for a minute so everybody can access it.
Let me see here. Okay, it says, it looks like here what stood out most for many of the people was the focus on post-traumatic stress syndrome. They can see the passion that Shadon has in her work, her very powerful presence. The discussions on ACEs seems to be a very common thread here. Let's take a look here. Can you move the slide down a bit here? Also seems like some were very interested in the healing and identity parts of you that had been healed yet, or basically the healing aspects of what Shadon spoke about. But those are some of the things that seem to have been some of the concepts that seem to resonate with some of our participants. Okay, so I'm thankful for, grateful for those who were able to participate in the poll. As I reviewed the results with you, pretty much people were, the ACEs seemed to resonate with a lot of people. There was a common thread among participants with that concept, as well as Shadon's just energy with presenting her information and how knowledgeable she is about that, this information, this important work that she does. And also, there were many who were interested in the ACEs, the information on ACEs. And I also saw in the chat where individuals were interested in taking the ACEs assessment. So I suggest that you get with Shadon, because I'm very interested in that as well. So again, I'm most grateful for those who were able to participate in the poll. And again, thanks for your participation, and thanks to Lisa for your facilitation of the poll. At this time, we will transition to our panel discussion. The theme of our platform is Thriving, Strong, Resilient Black Women Taking Action and Ending HIV Mental Health Stigma. The members of our panel have come to share their experiences in a very authentic way. As such, they have come to inform, offer hope, and to inspire. Our panelists are Mia Porter, Sharonda Lynn, and Bonnie Samuel. I will now share some background information about each of the panelists. Mia Porter is a mental health and human rights advocate. She is also the founder of Sister to Sister Support Group. She brings a host of lived and professional experiences as a healthcare worker at the McGovern Medical School, as well as protocol member and chair of the HPTN 091 and HPTN CWG HIV Prevention Trials Network of Houston, Texas. We welcome you, Mia. Sharonda Lynn, at the age of 19, Sharonda Lynn never thought she would be married or have any more children. Now, as a 40-year-old woman who is married with 3 beautiful children who are negative, she is committed to helping other people who not only struggle with being diagnosed with HIV, but who struggle with mental illness, to please find the help that they need. She is the founder of a nonprofit called Having Incredible Victory. She wants people to know that through her firsthand experiences, mental illness is real, to not give up, and that you can live an undetectable, happy life with HIV. We welcome you, Sharonda Lynn. Bonnie Samuel. Miss Bonnie Samuel is an author, poet, and playwright. She is also an advocate for people living with HIV/AIDS, drug awareness, domestic violence awareness, and mental health, which are the many chapters from her life. She is from Louisiana and currently resides in Dallas, Texas. Miss Bonnie is a loving mother and grandmother who loves life. She advocates because knowledge is power. Thanks to our beautiful panelists for their participation. At this time, I will begin our panel discussion. I urge you to journey with our panelists through this discussion. Let's consider resonating concepts and ideologies to fill our personal containers. Okay, so I will begin with the first question. What is the importance of family support when receiving an HIV diagnosis? Who would like to deal with this one first? Sharonda, would you like to take that one first?
Yeah.
Sharonda, you're on mute. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I think it's very, very important to have that container, whether it's your family members or somebody that you know that you can trust with your secrets. Because when you're going through something that's that painful, or you hear the first, the diagnosis of you having HIV, it's like, oh my God, I'm getting ready to die. So you need somebody that you can be able to talk to and confide with. It might not always be your family members. It might be someone that you can just really, really trust, maybe a friend. So that's very important, because if you don't have that support, a lot of us will start committing suicide. And it's very important that we have that support to let us know that we can move on. So it's very, very vital that you get the people that you need. you might not need your mom. You and your mom probably don't get along, but you have a good friend like my friend. She helped me out, and even when I was going through mental illness, this is definitely real. I had to talk to my parents, and they was like, well, Black people we don't have mental illness issues. That's the trick of the enemy. And so for a long time, I wouldn't go see a psychiatrist because that's what I was taught, a religion based. And my friend said, hey, go see a therapist. And because of her, I'm standing here now, thinking about committing suicide. So it might not always be your family. Find somebody that you can confide in and that does not mind telling you the truth and will walk with you all the way.
Thank you. Miss Bonnie or Mia, how do you guys care to deal with that statement?
Well, with me, it's more like you have to be very, very careful who you choose to tell your diagnosis to, because not everyone is educated or choose to be educated about your diagnosis, whether it be HIV or mental health, because some people are very, very uneducated and very negative. But I'm happy to say that I have family who knows about my diagnosis. I don't hide it from anybody because I feel like if I hide it, I can't help someone else that may be going through the same thing.
Thank you. Mia, would you like to add something? Would you like to add something or your experiences?
Sure. As a Black trans woman living in the intersection of mental health crisis and HIV, it's so important. It's so important to have the support of family. For those who do have diagnoses and for those who even do not, it's important to have the support of family for individuals to seek help, mental health treatment. One thing I realized was a lot of my family were very religious. So as Sharonda said, you're supposed to give it all to God. And we're not taught that, healing is work that we have to do and we can't just give it, pass it all off on God. So it's very important to have the support of family, but if you do not, chosen family, those that support and love you, who may not be your actual blood family, whom are family to you through loyalty, and friendship and just encouragement. It's very important to have support and a support system. I've always been taught that throughout my mental health journey and working in this industry. Support is very important. It's almost it's life changing, and it's life altering. I've had friends who had family to support them, but because of stigma, they never disclosed, and they died from complications of HIV. And they had loving families. So just because of the role that stigma played, it did not allow them to take advantage of the support that they had around them. So it's very important to break these barriers of stigma, HIV related, and stigma regarding mental health as well.
Thank you. So I noticed that you guys spoke heavily about family. So I'm noticing that for you all, it's not just biological family, but it's an extension of the biological family. How significant is that for you all? Anyone? Miss Bonnie?
Well, to me, to be able to have friends as well, and sometimes even in relationships, I am still at a point where I'm very careful as far as starting a new relationship, because sometimes, and even in the past, I've been in a relationship where I've trusted an individual, and they actually tried to use my diagnosis to hurt me because I wouldn't play by their rules. So stigma still has a major part in my life, you know. And with friends, is I have very close friends. They know my diagnosis. Not all of my friends are HIV positive, and they treat me just the same. There are some that just don't understand. And so those particular people that don't understand, they are not allowed in my circle.
Would any of our other panelists care to add anything to that?
When it comes to biological family, I think you have to be very careful because, as I said, biological family, blood doesn't necessarily make you family. Loyalty and love makes you family. You have to be very careful with who you have in your corner as your support system. Something similar. Well, I'm not going to say similar because it's something that very heavily affects the Black community as well. I notice a lot of Black women, even when they get a cancer diagnosis, they don't necessarily disclose that. And I think it's everybody's right to fight their diagnosis in silence if that's what they choose. But there were people that were fighting battles that I couldn't even support them because I didn't have any idea they were fighting these battles. So that's why sometimes, even though you have to watch who you allow to be your support system in your corner, who you disclose your diagnosis to, you still have to, rely on those friends around you that are really going to support you through it all, through doctor's appointments, the days you cry and you don't feel like dealing with it, the days that you're having the psychological effects from just stigma or your diagnosis. It's multi-layered. And so, yes, support is very important, very important.
Can I definitely have to piggyback on what Mia said.
Sure.
My mom, being in the state when I found out, that was 22 years ago, and I found out April 16th, 4 days after I had buried my cousin. We buried my cousin for complication of AIDS. And so at that particular time, my mom was going through and my aunt was going through. So me getting this diagnosis was very, very huge because oh my God, I'm getting ready to die. So when I went to my mom, she just completely shut down. She couldn't say anything. She told my siblings, my sisters. And let me tell you why it's very, very important that maybe your family is not the people that you should tell. Maybe you should have a good friend. And my sisters went out and told everybody. I was not ready for that. I was still trying to deal with it myself. On top of having a 1-year-old daughter who I thought I was going to die and leave her in this world alone. And it was my friend and my cousin was like, get up. The one that just buried her brother. Get up, you can do this. You can do this. But I went from, being this spunky person to sleeping in the closet. In my closet, didn't want to get out because of what my sister said and how they will tell me, that's why you have HIV, that's why you're going to die. I was 19. And to hear that from people that's supposed to love you, that was very harsh for me at that young age. So having my outside friends to be able to say, hey, go see somebody, and my cousin, they were adamant on this because I was getting ready to lose this fight to mental illness and to HIV because of what other people were saying that was in my family, with the stigma. And so now I talk about it and I'm bold with it. I'm Sharonda, HIV positive, been doing this thing for 22 years. And I love life, but I had to have somebody to push me. And it was not always my family. And so I didn't even know I was going through this. Shadon hit on a lot of different things that was very, very important. This seasonal depression, I did not know. Every April, I was just going to a depression. And my friend would call me every April and say, hey, get up out of that bed. I'm not even in Dallas. I'm in Jacksonville. She still calls. Hey, what you doing? And that's my accountability partner. You know, my cousin, hey, you okay? Because they knew I would go into a whole depression zone and wouldn't talk to nobody. And then when my kids come home from school, guess what? I made it again. Just, hey, how y'all doing? And then when I got them settled, I'm back in my bedroom in my closet. So it's very, very important you have that. That it does not mean it might not be your family, but somebody, your cousin, your friend, somebody that you know that can confide in you and that will be your accountability partner when you go through mental illness or that depression.
Sharonda, one of the participants stated that they were so sorry you had that experience and so grateful that you continue your journey to tell your story. So we appreciate that. And that goes for the rest of you all as well. You guys also talked about the importance of faith, connecting faith and therapy. How can you do both? Because I know I heard some of you guys say, and I know this is often common in the African-American community, that, you know, that like you, Sharonda said, that's the trick of the devil, but, you know, they're not, you know, recognizing the importance of the work that Shadon does and other therapists. So how can we, let's build some of the conversation around that. Sharonda, you sound like you have some burning desires. Ooh. So go ahead, why don't you be the lead off?
This is very, very important. Clergy and therapists do not get along. I think Baptist religious need to stay in their place, and let psychologists and psychiatrists stay in their place, do what their art was ordained to do on this earth. Religious, we go by, oh, that's the trick of the enemy. You know, Black people, we don't have those different issues. But you have to separate that. Allow your pastor to work on your spiritual being. However, you need someone to work on your mental being. Because let me tell you, could nobody pray me out of that closet? Can I be real about it? Could nobody pray me out of not being able to eat?
Someone said, thank you for sharing your truth.
They couldn't pray me out of that. I couldn't even pray my own self out of that. And who helped me was a psychiatrist.
Okay.
Yeah. So and once I got it together, then I went to my spiritual father. But it needs to stay in a separate lane. You can't fight something that you don't know anything about. And these psychologists and psychiatrists has been in school, and they understand the mindset of people. If it was not true, God wouldn't have gave them that talent. So I think that they need to separate it. Let the religious deal with spiritual things. Let psychiatrists and psychologists deal with the natural things. And that's a mental illness that we need. We need both.
Thank you. Someone said we require faith to heal. Faith without works is dead, says the church. So I think what they're saying is that we need both, like you say to Sharonda. It looks like Mia, did you have something to add?
Oh yes, I do. The reason I have something to add is because I have family that are very, I'm not going to say just religious, but spiritual. And I kept, hitting this brick wall where I'm like, I felt like I was gonna die. I was so depressed just because of mental health issues. And it got to a place where, like Sharonda said, it's just certain things you can't pray your way out of, And I do believe in God, and I'm very strong in my faith and my beliefs. But I remember the night before I admitted myself to a psychiatric unit, somebody said, "What are you doing that for? You're supposed to give it to God." And at that moment, I felt like, am I doubting God because I'm going to these therapists and to these psychiatrists to get help? But what I had to realize is sometimes God puts things in place for you to take advantage of to help you. When you've been severely traumatized, you develop chemical imbalance that you then develop mood swings and depression. And that's what you have to cope with on a daily. Now, the faith is to believe that you're going to get better, but faith without works is dead. So what are the works that you're going to put forth to get better? And that is, for me, and what I think therapy is so slept on. I think that we see the psychiatrist, we get the medication, we go have a few picnics, and we think we're okay. And I can speak personally. I hate going to the therapist. I hate opening myself up and having to talk about these things. But if I don't, I keep them compartmentalized. They stay rooted as seeds that reap harvest. And I have developed these coping mechanisms that are not necessarily healthy for my body. Some are harmful, like smoking, just to deal with the stress and the stigma and the mental health issues. What I learned is you have to draw the line. You have to draw the line between sanity and between faith. You can't expect God to do it all. You have a mind, you have a brain. God, he breathed his spirit into you, but you still have a brain that you have to keep up with. And one thing I learned is that I went so long with giving my body what it needed and neglecting my mind until my mind shut down and my body could not move. And I was mimicking paralysis. That mind is something you need a therapist. You need somebody that's not biased. You need someone who specializes in this to help you. This is mental health issues. It's something you cannot fight alone. And that's how a lot of us misconstrue what this journey is. You can't fight it alone.
I gotta say something real quick. I told somebody, I'm in Florida now. I said, okay, so you're telling me that we have to go to God with everything, okay? But you don't believe that God make different things. So why would you tell a person that has cancer to go to see an oncologist, okay? So if you can tell them to go see an oncologist because there's something wrong with they have cancer, why you can't tell somebody to go see a mental health doctor? You know, I said, I work in the medical field. You have your family doctor that you go see. He's not going to call the OR and say, hey, get the OR ready. I'm getting ready to have surgery on podiatry because he does not specialize in toes. So he's going to refer you out to a podiatrist. He's not going to call and say, hey, OR, get the OR ready. I'm finna come in there and do a triple bypass on a heart. He's going to call the cardiologist. So why is it so hard that if you do not know spiritually, hey, that's your lane. But you got to say, okay, hey, I'm going to work on the spiritual things. I believe faith, you have faith to get this work done, but you cannot grow and get stronger if you don't put no work towards it. So we need all of that. It does not matter. If I don't go to my infectious disease doctor and get my medication, guess what? I'm not undetectable. I will die. So I have to go. So if I can get help for all of those things, religious people, why can I get help with my mental? It's in the body. So that's what I tell people. I am very strong on religion. Yes, I am. That's my background. But I think it's a stopping point. If you tell your church members to go and get help with hypertension, cholesterol, then you should tell them to go get help with mental illness as well.
And also, I like to add that most of the Black churches, they ignore AIDS Awareness Month. They recognize Breast Cancer Month, heart disease, cancer awareness. But when it comes to this, and I understand, to me, it should go hand in hand because you're teaching people about how to live right. And it goes hands in hands. One sin is no better than the other. So if I can't go to my church and bring about a program about HIV awareness or mental health awareness, something that they like to sweep under the rug and say, don't tell nobody else. We don't want to run everybody else out of the church. That's stigma. And it's not right.
noticed that you ladies, the panelists talk a lot extensively about stigma. What are some strategies that we can employ to help us combat this notion, the notions around stigma and HIV and women with mental health? I see Mia. Do you want to take that
I
first?
just wanted to say something, and I was like, you know what? I gotta be intentional when I say this because this is the I gotta be intentional when I say this. For me, when it comes to mental health, I hate taking medication. That was a hard. It took me years just to take an antidepressant. I started off with a little anxiety medication, but I just could not adhere. Um, and I was like, because I don't want these pills controlling my body. And I had to recognize that, like I said earlier, when you go through trauma, you develop chemical imbalances. That those things have to be leveled while you're on this journey of healing. It's almost like, the medication is one crutch under one arm, and the therapy is the crutch under the other arm when you have a broken leg and you need to walk and you have to build your strength back up. You have to hold on to those two crutches until you can build your strength back up and until your cast is removed. So this healing, that's a good analogy to think of when it comes to healing. But stigma plays a big role, and I want to say this. A lot of us say we don't trust them white folks. Oh, I don't trust them white folks. I'm not listening to them white folks. And we don't have trust with medical professionals, healthcare professionals, because of the mistreatment of Black and brown bodies. It's almost like we never forgave them. And it's almost like a lot of us will never trust them again. But I had to trust somebody that didn't look like me. Not every licensed care professional counselor is Shadon, is Black, or a person of color standing in their light and in their truth. Some of them do not look like us. That don't mean they can't help us. So, and we can't be ignorant to where we just say, oh, well, they don't know nothing. They haven't been. I used to sit down and say, I would ask them for of their life experience to try to evaluate them, see if they had enough expert. Oh, did you go to college straight after high school? Oh, you never were homeless? You can't help me. And so I walked out of the door so many times from where I could have been getting help from if I just had sat down, opened up, let this individual get to know me and use their expertise to help me. And so that's when it comes to stigma, we have to trust our health care professionals more. We got to trust them. It's like, if you can't trust them with your life, then who can you trust? And I know that the systems are flawed. I know that everything is not perfect. Even as I have experienced difficulties, even as a healthcare worker. However, you have to be persistent and resilient about this and intentional.
Can I, on Mia, what she said, I'm very intentional. Like I said, I moved from Dallas, Texas. I'm in Jacksonville now. So I go on my Facebook page and I say, hey, this Sharonda again, I'm HIV positive, living my life. And I start showing them, I work out, I take care of my children, I take care of my husband, but I still have time for me. And it's sad because I believe I think it was Bill Cosby. He said, if you want to keep something from Black people, put it in the book. We won't read. A lot of us will not read. So, okay, since you won't read, let me give you something that you do. You go on Facebook all the time. You're on Instagram all the time. So let me tell you something. Okay, hey, this Sharonda again, 22 years in this HIV thing. Guess what? I'm living this happy life. I can do this. You can too. Removing the stigma. No, you cannot get HIV from drinking after me. No, you cannot get HIV from eating after me. If that's the case, my kids will have it. And then I'll let them know, hey, I'm HIV positive. I have 3 children. 2 of them I had after the fact that I was HIV positive, and all 3 of them negative. So don't tell me that the medication does not work. So I try to give them encouraging, I try to encourage them on my lifestyle. No, I have not always been with a positive person. I've been with a negative person. Guess what? He is still negative. Why? Because I take my medication and I'm undetectable. So I try to always go on Facebook, go on Instagram so they can see it, and so they can, because, it's easy for you to hear somebody say, oh, You can, you can live with HIV, but to see somebody doing it, walking this life, doing it every day, living my life like it's golden, and don't care what nobody say. I'm HIV positive, been in this thing for 22 years. Hey, and can't nobody lower my self-esteem. That's who I am, and I let them know so I can pull somebody else up out the gutter and let you know you don't have to die. It's a diagnosis. So what? Live your life. Either you're gonna live your life or you're gonna allow the diagnosis to live you. And guess what? If you allow the diagnosis to live you, you're gonna die early. If you live your life, take your medication, go to your doctor's appointment, hey, you can look good and keep on going. So that's what I do. I try to keep it on Facebook, Instagram to remove the stigma.
Okay, so we are, our time is winding down. Are there any closing remarks from our panelists?
I want to say, mental health is very important. HIV awareness is very important. Knowing your status is very important. And I can't stress this enough. When we talk about healing, we are not referring to just the body. We're referring wholeness within our physical self, our spiritual self, and our mental self. So as we, live life and we do all of these things for our physical and our spiritual, sometimes we forget about the mental. And we have to stop. We have to think. We have to process. We have to process that trauma. We can only do it with the help of healthcare professionals, mental health professionals that can help us through this journey. A lot of my followers know, as a mental health advocate, I still struggle. I was just in the bed for a week last week with a bout of depression, and it couldn't move, couldn't comb my hair, anything. This is the first time I've been able to put on makeup, okay? So I'm very candid about that. And I think another thing that we do, we have to be authentic. We have to be open and we have to be transparent about these things so that others do not feel stigmatized, and so that we can break the bondage of stigma.
I would just say, oh, go ahead.
Education is very, very important. People need to be educated, even people who are going through mental health or HIV need to be educated. Education is power. I'll never stop saying that. People need to know the signs and the warning signs of mental health, to see it not just in themselves, to notice it not just in themselves, but also in people that they know and care about, because it can go from bad to worse in a heartbeat. And sometimes you have to just really see the individual, and not be critical or judgmental, and be also educated about HIV, and not, because ignorance is bliss, and if you're educated, it's power. There are times when people will have the wrong idea or perception about one of the two. And if I really care about that person, I'll pull them to the side and I'll say, can I talk with you? And therefore, and at that point, I will begin the education of HIV, AIDS, or spousal abuse, or mental health. And after we sit down and talk, depending on how well they listen, and the outcome is phenomenal. Sometimes that's all it takes. It's just a moment to just sit down and talk.
Okay, so I just want to, this concludes our panel discussion. Someone put in the chat, thank you, Queens, for the panel. I hear and listen with vulnerability. I needed this. Thank you for sharing your space with us. I want to say thank you from the Black Women's Affinity Group. It means a lot. We also want to thank the many individuals who did much of the heavy lifting to make this program a success. More importantly, we want to thank our panelists. If there's nothing else, Bonnie Samuel will close us out with a poem.
Okay, before Bonnie does that, I just want to highlight some of
Okay.
the questions, well, the things that were put in the chat box, like one from Diana.
Okay.
Growing up in a Baptist church, mental illness was never recognized as legitimate, was a weakness that people gave into, never encouraged help for those needing help. I can relate to that. And there was, one that talked about how family is a huge part of the mental challenge. And also a lot of people talked about family that were not blood family, but family that they have grown to love and cherish in the journey of all of the mental health, the HIV, the stigma that goes along with it. And I would like to say that everyone loved, all of you panelists, just truly loved. Y'all encouraged so many of us to look at what this, what mental health is like for a Black woman like me living with HIV for over 21 years, but also the, the truth in education and what this looks like for mental health.
Thank you so much for that. We really appreciate that. Miss Bonnie, are you gonna?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Well, I too suffered with post-traumatic stress syndrome, bipolar disorder. Growing up and well into adulthood was extremely difficult for me because no one knew my diagnosis. And it was always sadly mistaken for crazy. I was cruelly misunderstood by almost everyone who knew me. No one could see me. I mean, really, really see me. This is my story. Can you see me? I am here. I am here, living, quietly breathing, hidden in the shadows, hidden from all that matters, hidden from this cold, cold world is this beautiful little Black girl. Can you see me now? Born into a large family, but was always alone. Never ever did I fit in. Am I doing something wrong? Head hung low, I sang the sad songs. Will there ever be a place where I belong? Can you see me now? I felt so low that I'd cry at the drop of a hat and not even know why I ever did that. Hiding in this space, this place in my head where there is no hope, only fear and dread. Can you see me now? Why me? Bullied, teased, disrespected, at the top of your list, but only to be purposely rejected. Your cruel and undeniable snickers and laughter does not fall on deaf ears. They penetrate my now and ever after. Can you see me now? You know my face. You think hate is a game. Your words are ever so mean and always laced with shame. You're always pointing fingers because we're not the same. And you don't even know my name. But I too am beautiful, like the ambers beneath the flame. Can you see me now? I had an undeniable need to be loved and accepted. But I felt that no one liked me, so I might as well forget it. I had low self-esteem. I felt weak and pathetic. Oh God, I just don't get it. Can you see me now? So as I grew older and became an unbalanced wife, I soon got married and had no happiness, no love, no spice. Silly me. Why didn't I think twice? Can you see me now? Still wondering why. Why couldn't I be like all the lucky people that I always see? And now they tell me I'm living with HIV and that my life would never, ever be the same. But for me, not much has really changed. Only the fact that stigma has even more defiant nicknames. Can you see me now? I grew tired of being what people wanted to see, the very people that claim to love me. Hiding behind my smiling mask had become a daily task. For many, many years, people called me crazy. I also slept a lot and had no energy. So they also called me lazy. Can you see me now? But finally, I had to take a long look in the mirror. And the fact that I needed help was evident and much clearer. I may not be as smart as thee. I may not have a PhD, but I still deserve to be treated respectfully. I only wish that they could see the God-given truth and beauty in me. Can you see me now? You see, for many years, neither they nor I ever knew that I was suffering mentally, not a physical ailment, you see, but an illness all the same. And now I know that serious illness of my unbalanced brain has a more prominent and profound name. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And for the most part, it's now under control. Well, kind of, sort of. Can you see me now? Somehow I found a light in a very dark place, but I dare not tell a soul, or I'd be embarrassed, or maybe even disgraced. This is the kind of world that I still had to face. Can you see me now? I knew that I had to set myself apart from those who didn't understand me or even knew my heart. I had to learn to love myself first, or my life would continue to go from bad to worse. Can you see me now? I'm a long way from being perfected, but I no longer fear being rejected. And I now love myself too, from head to toe and through and through. I'm so in love with life today. So who cares what they say? Can you see me now? Because of counseling and therapy, my life is awesome. I am strong. I am independent. I am loved, caring, loving. I am happy. I am optimistic. I am a fierce and beautiful Black woman of God. I am stable in mind, body, and spirit. I am here. I am medicated. Can you see me now? Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Bonnie, for that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful poem. Someone put in the chat, snaps. Beautiful, Miss Bonnie. I honor you. I see you. Thank you so much. At this time, if you, I would like to invite individuals, if you have resources that you would like to put in the chat, please do so. Please feel free to do so. Also at this time, I would like to invite you to complete a brief evaluation of the presentation. And this closes our presentation at this time. Would anyone else like to have, I'll just turn it over to Lisa at this time. Thank you, and you all have a powerful day.
Thank you, Matina. You did a great job of facilitating those conversations. Yes, so if you would please, you can either use the QR code on your screen, or there is a link posted in the chat for a brief survey. We would love to hear your feedback on today's topic and possibly even future topics for the group.